Welcome, adventurers. Today on Rebel Then King, we are going to revisit the Alchemist builds now that we have updates as part of Player Core 2 and see what has changed and what has improved. Let's start by talking about the old versus new Alchemist a bit. The old Alchemist, remember some of the problems that it had. Inventory problems to begin. At lower levels, you would often run out of inventory. You would typically have 5 reagents a day that you could use, and you could use some advanced alchemy with that and make 2 items for every reagent, maybe using 2 of your 5 reagents, let's say, to make 4 total items. Then you would have 3 reagents left over to use with quick alchemy throughout the day. That would be 3 additional items, and that would be 7 total items in the day. And between using some as bombs or other attacks, and then maybe wanting to heal or do something else, like use a mutagen to help out in a diplomacy check or something like that, well, you would kind of just run out of items very early on in your adventuring day, or you would be so hesitant to use them, it kind of wasn't fun. At least that was my experience. And then at later levels, you would often just run out of capacity. You would get a bunch more reagents as you leveled up, so much that, like, you know, at level 9, you would have like 10 per day, and you could have advanced alchemy. And then part of your field discoveries at that point was, well, you could, was it called field discovery? I don't know. But you could make 3 items with advanced alchemy rather than 2. So you could make like 13 or so items, and then you would have a lot. You know, that's over 1 bulk to carry. And as an intelligence and dexterity based character, that could kind of be the limits, especially because at those later levels, you typically have a few other magical items, invested items that assist you in crafting checks and things like that. So I noticed I would go from the earlier levels of running out of inventory to the later levels where I was encumbered all of the time. Then there were some subclass problems. Bomber always felt okay, but the Chirurgeon, you know, other than crafting for medicine, which was great, there wasn't really much of a bonus to healing or any healing abilities in combat or out of combat necessarily. As the Mutagenist, well, you kind of weren't actually that much better at using mutagens than any other character that could just take a mutagen, so it didn't really feel that impactful to choose this subclass. And as the Toxicologist, who relied on poisons, well, a lot of creatures would end up being immune to poison, so your big benefit wasn't a benefit at all. And then even if a creature wasn't immune, you would have kind of a lot to go through in order to effectively use that poison. You would have to land an attack, of course, at first. Then that creature would have to fail a save. And then sometimes, sure, you would do extra damage right away, but really the benefit of those poisons was lingering damage, which requires more time, damage at the end of a creature's turn, and then failing a check to keep the poison going. So it was kind of very difficult to get the most out of the Toxicologist. The new Alchemist, though, a lot of inventory fixes. First of all, advanced alchemy is now just 4 plus your intelligence modifier of items, so realistically 8 per day. If you notice, compared to the lower levels earlier, that's already more items. You know, I was making 4 items with advanced alchemy at level 1 as an alchemist. Now that's double. That does even out as you level up, which I think is better that the alchemist inventory is a bit, it's more even kilter throughout as you level up, whereas before it was just a huge difference between earlier levels and later levels, and it kind of traded one problem for another. Now it's more standard throughout. You also have 2 plus your intelligence modifier versatile vials for quick alchemy, and these are replenishable in downtime, so you get to keep using quick alchemy all day long. You even have an ability to make a new limited use versatile vial with quick vial. These are great mechanics, big fixes. I do wish they were organized better. It was the first thing I read when I opened up this Player Core 2 rulebook, and I found it kind of confusing. I have some suggestions on better ways to word that I have in another video. It works, though. It really is a much mechanically better system now. There are also subclass fixes. The Bomber is still fine. The Chirurgeon, well, can now throw healing bombs. The Mutagenist can repress the effects of some of those mutagens, and the Toxicologist can actually damage creatures that are immune to poison, and can use versatile vials to make a new kind of quick potion poison that doesn't have a save. let's take a look at some of those builds. Now, I think I'll kind of go in the same order. So here is the Acrobat Goblin Bomber. As a reminder, this is kind of an acrobatic, climbing around, throwing bombs, just chaos creature. That's why it's a goblin, acrobat background. And in this character build, the things that haven't changed are that ancestry and background, so I won't spend quite as much time on those. You can go check out my previous video for more details on some of those thoughts, but we do have some bonuses to our athletics checks to climb, and we have some bonuses to balance as well. In combat, we want to kind of climb to an advantage point because we do have combat climber and throw bombs down on people. What has changed with this character and with this class as part of Player Core 2? Not too incredibly much for the bomber. I wouldn't really change much about the alchemical items in the formula book, and as far as advanced alchemy goes, I would probably prepare, maybe just do one of each or kind of play around and see. This is going to depend a little bit on what your team dynamic is as well. Bottled lightning, which leaves a character flat-footed, that will be fantastic. It's always fantastic, but it's even better if you have a rogue in your party, for example, because that bottled lightning, the creature becomes off guard until the start of your next turn. So if you have a rogue, I would make a lot of bottled lightning and use that often. Flat-footed is always good, but, maybe something like the skunk bomb to leave some creatures sickened would be better in the end if you don't rely so much on flat-footed, but just want more general debuffs, and this can kind of do some area debuffs as well. The other thing to keep in mind is if we take a look at the bomber research field, is that as part of our field vials subclass feature, when we strike with a versatile vial, you can choose to have it deal cold, electricity, or fire damage instead of acid. Remember that the versatile vials, not only can they be used to create an alchemical item with quick alchemy, they can be thrown on their own as a bomb. Now, normally this only deals acid damage, but as a bomber, you can choose one of these other types. This means that you don't have to necessarily know the formula for like a frost vial, for example. You see, this character doesn't. But if you go up against a creature that has a cold weakness, you can still use that versatile vial, throw it, and say, I'm dealing cold damage this time, and you will apply that cold damage and activate that weakness. So that is a huge benefit for the bomber subclass, is not needing to know a fire, an acid, a cold, and an electricity. Was it? I already forgot. Yeah, electricity. You don't have to know an alchemical formula of each of those bomb types because you get to just use your versatile vial as one of those when you throw. So that is a good way to think of this. It almost means that as a bomber, I mean, I would keep the bottled lightning because it does have that off-guard condition, and some of these others. A lot of the alchemical items from the formula book are going to do damage and debuff. It's both, so they are stronger than your versatile vials on their own. But again, you don't have to know all the damage types as a bomber because you just get to do it with your versatile vials. That's pretty nice. Let's go on to the Chirurgeon, which I have here. Details on this one. This one is a bit of a team healer and a tank, surprisingly. Because we are a Chirurgeon, we're going to use our crafting checks rather than medicine checks to heal, which is good because we are an intelligence and crafting-based character. And then we also have this medicinal clocksmith background that is going to grant us risky surgery. That is super handy, and this does work with the crafting check because of the stipulations of Chirurgeon. Now, again, we get to kind of just do away with this whole daily prep thing that we have to used to worry about, and instead, we get to make 8 items in the morning. If you wanted to really really lean into healing. Like if you had a big party, maybe a party of 6 or 7, and you were the core dedicated healer, I would make a lot of numbing tonic in the morning, which grants creatures temporary hit points at the start of each turn. So this is very good for handing out to your party and then letting them pre-buff, self-buff during a fight. I think that would be a very good use of this. It's harder to use as quick vials or quick alchemy in combat because you would have to make it and then hand it off to someone right away. So this is a good use for advanced alchemy. I still like having the energy mutagen as a way to buff your own attacks using, again, the 4 types of elemental. I guess there are now 6. I wonder if like Alchemists will ever do metal and wood damage as well. That would be interesting. But cold, acid, fire. And then the antidote and anti-plague are still very good. And then, of course, the elixir of life is your go-to. I would probably make those in the morning as well to hand out to everyone. Now, as far as what you do in combat with your versatile vials, this is where this class got a huge boost, the subclass, I should say. Field vials. Your versatile vials can be used to heal a living creature a number of hit points equal to the initial vial's damage. That's going to be a d6. A creature can drink this vial for this benefit. Okay. Or you can throw the vial at a willing creature within 20 feet as an interact action. So you've got your 6 versatile vials. And if I use that example again of a party of 6 or 7, you can throw a d6 of healing at each of them in every encounter, provided you have enough downtime to replenish. Though, if you don't have enough downtime to replenish, you can still use the quick vial action to make a new versatile vial, which can be used in your subclass specific function. So you can, for 2 actions, create a quick vial and then throw that quick vial to keep the healing going if you didn't have enough versatile vials to keep your party up on their feet. So again, this is a character that is coming out way ahead of what it used to because that healing bomb ability is so fun and it gives them something specific in combat to help out their team. Let's now go on to the mutagenist. Mutagenist. As a reminder, this one is an orc gladiator. It is a beast, and the mutagen makes so much sense here as someone who would go in and amp themselves up for combat, do something big and grotesque and fantastical to get through an encounter. Some of the background and ancestry, we have a hold-scarred orc. It's going to give us extra toughness. Juggernaut mutagens we're going to use to boost our toughness even more. Orc weapon familiarity. We're going to use the knuckle dagger, which is going to be good at doing damage while keeping a hand free. And then we've got deadweight mutagen to take this and shove and trip and kind of be the upfront athletic-based debuffer of the party. And then again, energy mutagen like I had on that Chirurgeon, because this is a good way to trigger weaknesses if you think that a character that you're fighting might have a weakness. This is also a somewhat charismatic character with the gladiator background, giving us impressive performance. The theatrical mutagen can be used. And the issues that I had in this one is that most mutagens aren't that great. And it's due to a lot of the times the debuffs that you would get with the mutagen. So what does this character now do to deal with that? Let's take a look at the research field. How does it use the field vials? You can drink the contents of one of your versatile vials to suppress the drawback you take from one mutagen currently affecting you until the beginning of your next turn. So now, whenever you have these notes that I had here, just like something being terrible because you're debuffing yourself along with buffing, well, now instead you can take that mutagen, slam one of your versatile vials, and get rid of the negative effects. This is a lot of fun. I still think this is going to suffer a bit in the action tax because, well, you take a mutagen, and then if you don't want to have the negative effects, you're basically signing yourself up for drinking a versatile vial in every turn to keep those negative effects away, which is also going to eat up your versatile vial supply pretty quickly. So as an example, the energy mutagen. Well, this will let you apply extra damage of a certain energy type, but will give you a weakness to the other energies. Now, this has always been sort of a mutually assured destruction thing, if you ask me, where you are, you know, maybe you're going up against something that is weak to cold, but does fire damage. Okay, well, you take the cold mutagen and you activate its weakness and you do extra damage. But now you have a weakness to fire damage, which it does. So you are standing next to each other, just obliterating each other's hit points. Now you can drink one of your versatile vials. You don't gain a weakness to fire, and you are doing extra damage without taking extra damage. That is quite an improvement, though I do wish that perhaps it lasted a little bit longer, like 2 rounds or something. Because again, you will have this action tax of needing to take an action every turn to undo the negative effects of that mutagen. But now let's go on to the Toxicologist, which is probably the most improved. Now this was a noble warrior, kind of a cunning, stealthy, and used poisons as a sort of sophisticated choice. We picked up Tengu weapon familiarity to give us some really good martial, high-powered weapons that the Alchemist normally would not have access to. As far as advanced alchemy goes with this character, we do have, well, first of all, there aren't all that many poisons, so you're going to stack up some other formulas in your formula book. So I picked up some mutagens to help us out in exploration, like Cheetah's Elixir and Eagle Eye Elixir. And we do have the Spear Frog and Giant Centipede. Now, the thing is, remember that multiple exposures to the same poison do stack. So therefore, it's very beneficial to stab or slash the same creature multiple times in a round across your party with the same poison, so you can have it stack up in stages. So for example, the Giant Centipede Venom. At stage 1, an extra D4 poison damage for 1 round. Okay, so, you know, if that goes through, that's an extra D4. Stage 2, 1 D4 poison damage and fatigued. All right. Stage 3, same, 1 D4 poison damage, fatigued, but also clumsy 1. Now, what I mean by repeat exposures is, let's say on your turn, you successfully poison this creature. And then 2 other team members go. They also have the same poison on their weapon. They stab. The target creature fails its fortitude saves against this. And, well, guess what? That creature is now at stage 3 automatically. Now, not only is that 3 extra D4 from each of the exposures, but the creature is now going to be clumsy 1 and fatigued. And it is at stage 3, which means at the end of its turn, it will take this damage. It will need to make a check to reduce the stage of the poison. And even if it critically succeeds at that check, it's still going to be poisoned down to stage 1. If it fails, it will still be at stage 3. So basically, if you get something to stage 3 like this, you almost can walk away and just keep it at distance, because chances are, round after round, it's not going to fully get out of the stages of poison. And that poison will slowly, I mean, relatively slowly, but over the course of a few rounds, kill the creature. So multiple exposures are a really good thing, which means I recommend making quite a lot of the same poison and handing them out to your teammates. This does get into a little bit of logistics of when do you use that poison? You know, probably ideally for bigger battles where you really need that extra damage, which means you kind of need maybe like a special poison blade that everyone has and they only take out at a coordinated time. Another good option is poisoning maybe like the bolts of your crossbow ranger or something like that, and saying, the ranger keeps the poison bolts on their left hip and the regular bolts, you know, on their right hip or something like that. So they know when to take out the poisons and make multiple shots. So that is something to do with your advanced alchemy. Now, as far as your quick alchemy goes, let's dive in again, see what our field vials do. Before I do that, I should just reiterate the field benefit here. You can apply an injury poison you're holding with one action. We'll just go skip over that because that's what it used to be anyway. The new part, though, is your infused poisons can affect creatures immune to poison. A creature takes acid damage instead of poison damage. Now, this is interesting because if we read on, from your infused poisons, if the creature is immune to poison, blah, 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 as determined, typically this benefit applies when the creature has immune resistance. So this to me means that the damage will go through, but the debuffing effects of poisons won't. So it's kind of a bit of loss, but that's where the field vials are very cool. Your versatile vials have the poison trait and can deal poison damage instead of having the acid trait and dealing acid damage, though your field benefit still applies. So field vials typically do acid damage, but now yours do poison. But if a creature is immune to poison, it goes back to doing acid. Kind of funny, but it works out in the end. And this means that and then I should also say you can apply the contents of your versatile vial to a weapon or piece of ammunition as an injury poison. So you can continue to poison your blade with your versatile vials and not have to use it as a bomb that does acid. But then again, remember, if the creature is immune to poison, your poison still works, but now back again as an acid. It works out, though, that does get to be a little action tax heavy, and it's certainly not quite as fun as stacking up multiple exposures to the same poison with the more traditional poisons from the list of alchemical items, but it works out well. Overall, this is a massively improved class. It is still not perfect. I do love the bomber, though. I mean, that's always been fun, even when it wasn't the strongest class. Now, I really like the versatile vials for the bomber. It really does mean that you can almost not have to think about the traditional bombs from the alchemical item list and instead just use your versatile vials to target weaknesses and then use your advanced alchemy and versatile vials to make items to do all the other things that you might want to do as an alchemist. The Chirurgeon got that healing bomb, which is so fun and so cool and gives them something else to do in combat, because before they didn't have any combat specific anything. The Mutagenist, still not perfect, but definitely improved with the ability to suppress some of your mutagens. There are some later level feats that do things like let you heal from your mutagens, which is another like, hey, finally, the Mutagenist can do things with mutagens that other characters can't do. That was, you know, very desperately needed. And the Toxicologist, a lot of the huge hurdles to using poisons are now removed with the whole ability to poison things that are even immune to poison. Still maybe a little action tax heavy and maybe still a little bit difficult to coordinate your giant poison attacks amongst your team. But if you can do so, I mean, you can bring down big scary creatures by stabbing them a few times and walking away. And that's a pretty powerful thing, so I guess it shouldn't be too easy. All in all, it works out well. We'll take a look at one of the other classes next. I'm not sure which. It depends on what I'm feeling that day. Thanks, adventurers. Stay tuned for the next one.